Guys, welcome everyone. My name's Cassidy Schmidt. I'm a financial advisor here at GA Investment Management. I'm here to introduce our speaker for this webinar, Ryan Redman. Ryan has been the owner and funeral home director of Redman Funeral Homes since purchasing it from his father, Richard, in 2005. Ryan is a 1994 graduate of the Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science and has been a licensed funeral home director with the state of Pennsylvania since 1996. Redman Funeral Home, if anyone's familiar, is located in Freeport, Pennsylvania. I know personally it's like a local establishment that everyone here is pretty familiar with. It's actually been family owned and operated since 1968. And Ryan and I, in talking about this webinar, we've decided our goal is to provide you guys with knowledge that will hopefully give you some comfort whenever you're making those end-of-life decisions or talking to family members who are going through similar situations that we all go through. So, Ryan, do you want to do any introductions for yourself?
Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for having me. I just want to let everyone know that this is a first time for me, so be kind. When I got the call from Cassidy that they wanted to put this together, I thought it was a great idea because so often I answer questions of what should I do, how should I do it, when should I do it. Another big one is how do I pay for it. So I think this will really inform folks here and kind of give you some guidance on what to do in the future.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of a topic not many people talk about openly.
Right. Yeah, this is one of those things that unfortunately everybody has to eventually do, but nobody ever wants to do it. And to pre-plan your arrangements, it's stress-wise, it's much easier if you pre-plan.
Yeah. And with that, guys, I just want to let everyone know, the participants, that you can type in the Q&A box if you think of any specific questions that we haven't covered, and we'll answer them at the end or during the middle of it. All right. So Ryan, if you just want to get started kind of on maybe the process of pre-planning.
Okay, so kind of give you an outline of what happens. A lot of times people will call the funeral home and they'll say, hey, we're considering of pre-planning our funerals. So one of the big things is deciding actually what you want done, and whether it be a traditional funeral service, whether it be traditional in regards to a burial. There's also traditional services with cremation. There's direct cremation. There's direct burial. So what I always try to tell people is to sit down with their families and understand what they want, as well as what your wishes are in regards to your services. The other good thing to do is obviously to get everything written down on paper. That way there are no questions down the road what you may have wanted or what one of your loved ones may have wanted. Everything is there. Your wishes are known to everyone. So it's very important, I think, to sit down with your family. A lot of people have family outside of the area, and when a death does occur and they have to come in on a short notice, there's a lot of stress. So if you can alleviate that stress by having everything in order, it makes one of the hardest times in our lives a little easier. Stress-wise. So.
And Ryan, do you hold on to those instructions whenever you do pre-planning?
Yes, we do. What I always do is I encourage people when we sit down, we go through a whole list of personal information. That's the information we need to do all the filing with the state, and also obituary information. So I always keep a copy of all of that, everything that we've talked about. That's all kept in a file for each person. Okay. And then I try to encourage people, and they usually do, to take a copy of that home. Keep it with your important papers, a will, obviously keep those with insurance policies and things like that. That way everyone has a copy of it and everyone else in their family has a copy as well.
Do you have any reluctant participants ever where
Always.
people are trying to get them to pre-plan and they won't?
So I come across, not often, but a few times a year, a family will come in and like you said, we're in Freeport. And if anyone's familiar with Freeport, it's a very small little town. We have one stoplight. So it's very, very cozy. So I'll have people come in that says, hey, mom, dad, they said, don't worry about a thing. I got everything taken care of with Ryan. Everything's taken care of. They come in and they didn't. A lot of times they'll do that just to basically get their kids off their back, where they say, hey, mom, dad, we need to do this. We need to get this taken care of. We need to know what your wishes are. And a lot of people are very reluctant, like I said before, in planning their funeral. So we kind of push them off and kind of say, well, we're not going to worry about it. So
yeah.
But yes, it's very important to do it. So the biggest thing to me, I always try to encourage people when they do come in to make prearrangements, is that you get to decide what you want. There's no one making decisions. There aren't, say, 4 or 5 children thinking, I wonder what mom would want. I wonder what dad would want. They can look on a piece of paper and say, hey, listen, this is what mom wanted, and these are her wishes. This is what we're going to do. And then they don't have to be, there's already so much stress to begin with. They don't have to worry about picking things out, casket, clothing, the type of services they want, when they want the services, how long they want visitation and things like that. That's already written down on paper and everyone knows. So it's very important, with families all over the place nowadays, in different states, sometimes in different countries, the communication isn't always there. So this way they don't have to, I don't want to use the word argue, but discuss different things that they would think their mother or father would want.
Especially when they're grieving the families.
Yes, I always say the two most stressful times in your life are your wedding, most notably for guys, and funerals, unfortunately. So if everything can be planned ahead of time, it takes away a lot of stress, and you can just kind of focus on family and your loved one.
Are there any common mistakes you see people making or families?
I think mistakes would tend to be a result of communication breakdown between families. Again, in our area, we have traditionally we have big families. There's a lot of people that come in that have 4 or 5 siblings, children, and there's different ideas and different things that people think that the person would have wanted. So I think mistakes tend to come from a miscommunication or lack of communication. So,
and you have to help moderate sometimes, probably.
Yeah, that gets interesting. There's a lot of different personalities within each family, which is really sometimes a lot of fun, but it can be very stressful when you've got strong-willed on one side and strong-willed on the other side, and so you kind of have to play referee in the middle, which isn't always fun.
No.
So it's interesting, that's for sure.
And keeping the families happy and also honoring the person's wishes of the funeral, which you're planning. You can imagine that's very difficult.
Yeah, and again, that falls back to the pre-planning. It's just, I can't stress enough how important it is for folks to sit down and just like they plan their wealth management, they should plan for the future for their funerals as well. That way, everything is out in the open, it's discussed. There's no stress. When there is a person who passed away and you make arrangements, it's very, very stressful. When you can sit down with your funeral director and say, listen, this is what I want. This is how I want it taken care of. This is how I want it handled. This is how I want it paid for. When you don't have that stress of a loved one passing, hanging over your head, you make better decisions and better choices. So.
And that's another thing I've thought of, the time frame of pre-planning. Now, I don't think you'd want to do it or maybe you want to revisit it if you do it well ahead of time. You'd want to make sure that's still what you want in 5 years, or
Right, and that's a lot of well, every funeral home that I know of. When they get done making arrangements with someone, they always say, look, this isn't set in stone. If you decide that you want to change things, you just call us. Let your funeral director know, and we'll change things. And the only way those things can change is when the person calls us. And, so it's not like the kids can call and say, listen, we want to change this.
Yeah.
That gets kind of dicey, because then you have to say, well, listen, you need to call your mother, you need to call your father, and make sure that's what's going to happen. But yeah, it's so important, I think, for families to do that, to sit down and get a something in writing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So another thing I always try to tell folks too, when choosing your services, what you want, and as we can see, some, like I said earlier, traditional burial, traditional funeral services, cremation is becoming very, very popular. The other thing that's very popular that we've been doing more and more of, and a lot of funeral homes have, is a traditional service, but with a cremation as an alternative to burial. Some of the old ways of thinking was, well, I'm going to be cremated. We're not going to have anything. But we do a lot of traditional, visitation, funerals, and then instead of going to the cemetery, we would take the person to the crematory. So that's another thing that can be chosen when you're pre-planning.
Right. And I know the funeral service, lots can happen in a church, or if you're planning in the funeral home. So
right.
do you arrange the people who would be doing the service?
Yes. So the location of the actual funeral service, and actually sometimes even the visitation. We've done many visitations where someone who's very involved with their church, we may have a visitation at a church where we would use, say, a social hall for visitation, and then we would move directly into the sanctuary for the actual funeral service. So that's something else that can be planned when pre-planning.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah, those are important decisions.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other aspect of pre-planning is the cost of, not just choosing what you want and where you want it, but then funding it ahead of time.
Yeah. And as everyone knows, the prices of funerals are going up and up, just like everything else. Price of caskets are going up. I just got my cemetery prices for a lot of the cemeteries in the area, and they've all gone up. So one of the nice things about choosing your funeral now and choosing all of your merchandise and all of your services, and then also choosing to pre-fund that. Many funeral homes will use, for us, we use a third-party insurance or an annuity product to fund the funerals. So the nice thing about that is, along with the services that are planned, it is prepaid, so that when someone passes, you don't have to worry about, well, where are we going to get the money? How are we going to pay for it? How will we divvy this up between the siblings, between the children, things like that. So we always put it into an insurance vehicle or an annuity vehicle. And the other thing that's nice about that is it locks in the price. So, you could be in your mid 50s, mid 60s, early, 70s, and pay for your funeral now. And that's it. So let's hope that everyone lives a long, full life up to 101. And at that time, we would then have everything paid for. And there's no stress on the family on making payments to a funeral home. So that's really nice.
Likewise with what if they want to pay outright in cash? Can they do that?
So anything, speaking for my funeral home, just myself, I do not take cash. No matter what, it is placed into a third party funding vehicle. If you do bring cash in, we go to the bank and we get a cashier's check. And then we have that written out to the insurance company that I use for, basically it's an irrevocable trust is what we put it into. So again, speaking for myself alone, we don't take cash.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer, exactly. Yes. Yeah, we don't do that. I've had that happen too, and it can be nerve-wracking too.
Yeah. And do you have to prepay to pre-plan?
No,
okay.
No. A lot of folks will come in and pre-plan, get all of their arrangements on paper, obviously let their family know and what they want, and then many people, I should say, already have insurance in place. So what we can do there is we can attach an absolute assignment to an existing insurance policy. So if someone would have a lot of people have a $10,000, $20,000 policy, we can attach an absolute assignment to that policy that says to the insurance company, when this person passes, we're going to pay the funeral home. So that's a nice thing. The only problem with that is that in that process, it doesn't guarantee the cost of the funeral, but it is paid. When the person passes, I guess would be the way to put it.
Yeah. So the discount for you really comes in that the price is locked in no matter when they die from this point on.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you choose to fund with your funeral home, the prices are locked in. And typically those funds, the monies that are taken in, they're placed into, like I said, either an insurance or an annuity. And they usually grow anywhere between 2 to 2.5% per year. So that offsets any cost increase through the funeral home. And the other nice thing that happens a lot of times is there's excess. Those things grow more than what our costs increase. So many times we're able to give some money back to the family, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Which doesn't usually happen with a lot of things.
Yeah. No, that never happens.
No, so that is nice. So, of course, then it becomes a problem of who do we give it to, but so there's always a beneficiary on the insurance that we use or the annuity that we use. So there was someone who always receives it. Typically it would be the next of kin or the person making the arrangement. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have, obviously I have up on the screen, costs of funeral. Are there any things that people typically forget about or don't think to plan for when they're going to put on their own?
Yes. So in regards to just the funeral service, the cost of funeral goods and services, those are things that would be our professional service fee, embalming fee, preparation of the body, use of facilities, use of automotive equipment, and then of course merchandise, casket, vault, paper goods. That would be your registered book, acknowledgement cards, the memorial folders. So some of the things that are associated with the funeral process but aren't part of the funeral home fees would be death certificate, obituaries, ministers, flowers. Sometimes hairdressers. Sometimes people have us go out and purchase clothing if someone didn't have anything. So those are fees that we don't, we basically pay for folks so that they don't have to take out of pocket costs. So those things can all be prepaid as well, or pre-funded. Sometimes people do a luncheon afterwards, and some of the, there used to be a lot of people that went to the churches and had the ladies from the church would do the luncheons. There are fewer and fewer of those. So a lot of people will rent a hall or something like that and have it catered. So that can be upwards of $1,000 there. So that's an unforeseen cost as well. So that's something that can be discussed with your funeral director. Hey, I'd like to put this money away in case they would want to have a wake afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah. And flowers are another big thing too. People, they don't always think about the flowers. Some funeral homes do have their own flower shops. We do not. So we outsource that obviously to the local florist in town or in the surrounding areas. And those costs can be significant as well.
Yes.
So all of that can be placed into a pre-funding account, which is nice. And you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Just more things that puts everyone at ease, the family,
Yes.
the person, and their family.
Yeah, and when doing the pre-arranging, the pre-funding, and sitting down with your funeral director and going over everything, the nice thing, and I always tell folks, is when someone does pass, you basically make one phone call, and the funeral director will set everything in motion. The funeral director will get the casket, get the vault, call the cemetery, call the florist, call the minister, contact the church, contact a lot of the other, like I say, if someone was a vet, we will contact the honor guard to have them come in to do a service. So all of that can be taken care of ahead of time, lessening the burden on the family. And again, you just make one phone call and it sets everything in motion.
Yeah, and that's a good question actually I got from the first email.
Oh, good.
Is when someone dies, like obviously pre-planning is great, but we don't always have the luxury of doing it. Sometimes
Right.
It's sudden. When someone dies, what's the first steps to take?
So when someone passes away, obviously the first step is choosing your funeral home and contacting the funeral director. Then I guess the easiest way that we would go and get the person who's passed, take them into our care, bring them back to our facility. And then we would decide what services the person wants or the family wants, whether it be a traditional, whether it be cremation, and that's something that's decided on right away. One of the important things about that is we get confirmation before we would do any type of preparation on the body. If someone wants to have a direct cremation, no viewing, no nothing like that, there's no need to do any type of preparation work, whether, with the embalming. So if someone does decide, yes, listen, we're going to have a day of viewing, we're going to have a funeral service at our church, then we would go ahead, get a verbal authorization from the family and start the embalming process as soon as possible. And then we'd set up a time to meet and discuss everything, go over all of the arrangements. So that's where all the stress comes in.
Yeah.
So doing the pre-planning, it's a one phone call and that's it. And then you would tell your funeral director, hey, we're going to do this on Tuesday, we're going to have a funeral on Wednesday, and everything gets set in motion.
Yeah, and you have the luxury of time too. When you plan ahead of time, you don't have to make rush decisions.
Right, and you make a better decision when you don't have the stress of the death of a loved one hanging over top of you.
Yeah.
A lot less stressful. So, yeah.
All right. Let's skip to this question. Someone asks, when families are having trouble talking about this, is there any tips you have for just having the conversation and getting it started for the reluctant folks?
Well, this is where the psychology, I guess, comes in.
Yeah.
It's so hard and everyone's different. I wish I could say, yes, this is what we do every time. This is what you can say, this is what you can do. But everyone is different. Everyone deals with this differently. I have folks that come in and we have a good time and we talk and we laugh and they talk about their life and what they want. And then I have other people that just absolutely refuse to talk about it. So I wish I had a better answer for how to go about this, how to approach this with loved ones. But there isn't a magic, there's no magic on how to do that. So it's just communication's the key. Just sit down with your family and try to encourage them to do this. Let them know that if you're planning for your parents, let them know that this is going to alleviate some stress on you when their time comes.
Yeah.
And also, if you are making your arrangements and your children are reluctant to talk about it, you got to let them know that, hey, I want you to understand what I want and what your mother wants or what your father wants, so that there aren't any questions when the time comes. And it,
Yeah.
you know, and I keep falling back on alleviating the stress on one's family. It's so important.
Yeah. And that's really the point we're coming from, is that it's just to help you in the future and your family.
Yes, yes. And there's just no questions. Everything's taken care of.
Yeah. Something we've created internally at GA is called the Family Instruction Letter. And it's basically just something that you would fill out for yourself about everything about you that someone might need to know, like loans, professional contact, if you have a will and power of attorney, the personal and demographic information for making an obituary perhaps, and what you own, you know, any car loans, any house loans, all of your investment assets and where they're held. And maybe that's a softball way to kind of start the conversation, is saying, I made this, and if you need anything in it, it's here. And this will be available on our website too.
That is such a helpful tool in getting things organized. I come across so many people, and they will tell me, I have no idea where mom kept things. I have no idea what dad has. I don't know where their insurance is. I don't know where the titles to the cars are, the title to the, a lot of people have camps. I don't know where any of that is. And people will just bring in boxes of stuff that we'll go through. I try to help people go through, you know, and find the important papers. So with this, what you guys have put together, I think that's wonderful. And then everybody knows where everything is.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. And that also alleviates too. Another stressful thing is getting death certificates. How many death certificates do I need? What do I need a death certificate for? When you have a packet like this, you know, there's no questions. We need one for this, 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 and this, and it's all in that in your letter.
Yeah, and hopefully, like life insurance policies, hopefully, you know, you keep a safe somewhere and they're all together, and then you have to communicate that you first have this letter, you made it, keep it up to date, and let everyone know where it is.
Right. That's a really good point, because sometimes people have no idea where their parents' things are.
Yeah. So I'll send this out as an email to all the participants, and then I will also put it on our website so everyone knows where this is. I think this is just a great way to start the conversation. And I know going through it, making it, there was things I wouldn't have thought of to tell anyone.
Yeah, that's a great tool.
Yeah, and like we said, just like with your wills and your legal documents, your funeral arrangements that you pre-planned or your family instruction letter, definitely review it and keep it current and communicate it with your family.
All great tips.
All right. I'm looking for questions.
Oh boy.
Yeah, how often would you review the funeral arrangements, Ryan, would you say?
So on my end, once people make arrangements, that's it. That is what I go by. They will be reviewed if someone calls me and says, hey, I'm going to make a change. Then I typically, most funeral directors will sit down with the family and go over all of those changes. Changes can be as simple as, hey, we had 4 more grandkids. You know, we want to add this to our obituary information. Or, you know what, we're moving down south, and we're going to completely change our original arrangements. That happens quite a bit. People will get tired of the cold weather and they want to move to Florida. And that's another thing that can be taken care of as far as transportation from where the person where the folks moved down south, getting them back up here to this area and taking care of things that they originally planned. So that's a little bit of change in the original. It can also be a very stressful time. Like, how do I get mom back up here? So
Yeah.
that can be reviewed. But as far as sitting down and reviewing things, when someone calls me and says, hey, I want to make a change, then we review it. But other than that, once they make them, that's what I go by. And so, you know, every other funeral director does as well.
Yeah. And maybe just for everyone out there who was making one, maybe remember to review it yourself and know when those changes occur. And you have to
Yeah. Let us know if you've had a couple more grandkids.
Yeah.
Yeah. That way I don't get in trouble when the obituary is wrong.
Yeah. The obituary, I imagine that's hard.
It's actually kind of, it's interesting because it's a snapshot into someone's life. If someone can sit down and write their own, I think that's great, because there's things in there that you may want, you may not want, and to let your family know that this is what you want is the best way to do it. So yeah, the obituary can be a lot of fun going.
So if they write their own obituary, can they give that to you to put on file?
Yeah, and that's like one of the first things that I start out with whenever we make arrangements is, let's go over your obituary. Let's get all of the information we'll need to run in the newspaper. Now, you don't have to run something in the newspaper, but that's one of the first things that we always try to go over is just the personal information. And that helps us obviously with the obituary, and then also the paperwork that we have to file with the state. Unfortunately, just like everything else, there's a lot more paperwork these days than there was back when my dad started in '68, and everything was done with a handshake. Everything now is in triplicate, and you have to fill out this form and do this form, and so if we have that information on hand, it helps us a lot. So
yeah. All right. I don't see any more questions. If anyone wants to throw any in there. Ryan, is there anything else we haven't talked about that you think's important to cover?
Well, I just want to stress to folks, whether you pre-fund or not, have a conversation with your family on what your wishes are. Whether you decide to pre-plan or not, prepay or not, have a discussion, talk about it, communicate with your family on what you want, because when the person is gone, it's very difficult to try to sit and think, what would mom want? What would dad want? So, and then like we said earlier, it's a hard thing to talk about. It's not like you sit around the kitchen table and say, hey, what do you want to do whenever your time comes? But if you can have a conversation now, it's very important.
And it's going to happen. So you have to start talking, hopefully.
Yep.
You can have
funerals
that.
Funerals and taxes, two things we can't avoid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I don't see any more questions coming through. So Ryan, thank you very much for your time today. If anyone thinks of any questions they want to ask later on when they're mulling this over, you can send it to info@retirewithga, and we'll confer with Ryan and get back to you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to folks. Hopefully, I've helped them with a stressful time.